Good afternoon, and thank you everybody for joining me for an invoice in the crowd, building a bulletproof invoice review process that your users will love. So a few housekeeping items that I want to start out with is everybody's going to be muted. Questions, if you have them throughout the presentation, can be added into the questions box. The slides and screenshots will be available upon request. Don't hesitate to reach out with any questions. And then this webinar session will be recorded and it will be available through our CDI YouTube channel after a day or two. Today's agenda, we are going to go through the 5 main steps to planning automation processes. This isn't necessarily specific to accounts payable automation, but essentially tackling any automation process in your organization. Then we're going to jump into a live demo, some tools that you can use, as well as additional resources for getting you started. So planning for automation. One of the first main essential goals to setting yourself up for success is establishing ownership and securing buy-in. These two are really important because there needs to be somebody within your organization who understands the process and is capable of building out the automation and ensuring essentially that your project is being managed internally by your staff. Securing the buy-in is also really important to ensure that the people within the department that you're building the automation for are in agreement that this is something that they need and something that they'd like to see out of your system. So ensuring that we have buy-in from everybody within the department or, the key stakeholders such as your department managers and department team leads is really important. We want them to know what they're going to get and feel comfortable with the process that it is. Otherwise, if you spend all that time implementing a process and they decide they don't want it, all that time is wasted. Another really key part to building out your automation processes is gathering your requirements. This is something that CDI spends a lot of time on now with new deployments of, whatever it may be, is spending time learning what the existing process is and then leveraging our knowledge and tool set to convert that to a Laserfiche digital process. We highly recommend that you get a whiteboard, you sit in a room together and really outline and sketch what your process is, who it starts with, how the documents first come to you. Maybe you get a majority of your invoices through email, or maybe you're scanning in all of that paper. You need to identify all of the starting roles to your process, and then do we filter and funnel our invoicing based on the vendor itself or the dollar amount, whatever it is, and outline what that process is so that we can build it out within Laserfiche. From there, we build out the process to spec and then train staff on how to use it. So that's just end user training, showing them how they're going to interface with the process and how it's all going to flow for them. So this is just a quick overview on what our demo flow is going to look like today. I have just one Laserfiche demo prepared, and it's going to be very simple. So we're just going to drag and drop some documents into Laserfiche. Laserfiche is going to extract all the information. We're going to have a review task where I can then go ahead and take a look at that invoice that I had submitted and apply some line items, things like that, coding, GL codes. Then it's going to route for approval, autofile, rename into the folder structure, archive, and then the data push, and then Laserfiche is going to create a data push to our ERP. So this final part, depending on the version of Laserfiche you're on and maybe which ERP you're using, we can either potentially push transactional data directly into your ERP or create a CSV import file for you. where all of the transactional detail that you need is essentially put into an Excel document with columns that is then eligible for importing into your ERP system. And then that way you are not having to rekey all of those lines after approval. It just simply pushes in for you automatically. So let's jump into our demo. So today, my demo, I'm going to be presenting in the Laserfiche cloud environment. Sorry, let me get this PowerPoint out of the way. And here's our repository. I'm just gonna open up our incoming scans folder. Typically what we recommend and a best practice for Laserfiche is setting up an incoming scans folder. And that's what Laserfiche workflow is set up to monitor. So every time you add a new document in, maybe apply a certain template or just drag and drop it, maybe based on user, a workflow will grab that document and then kick off whatever automation process you need from there. So here from my desktop, I just have a few sample documents. I'm just going to drag and drop them into Laserfiche. I'm not going to bother applying a template because in my particular scenario, my starting rule is set up so that any new incoming document in this incoming scans folder, as long as it contains the word invoice, it's going to kick off my automation process. So I'm just going to go ahead and click import. And then it's going to bring these 3 documents into my repository. And I'm actually going to apply this properties to all imported files checkbox, which I should have done first. And then it's just going to import them all with the same properties. So no metadata, no nothing, just drag and drop the files into my cloud environment so that workflow will pick them up from here. So we can see invoice number 1 is already gone. And up here in my cloud environment, I have this little green indicator, which means something's changed. So I'm just going to click refresh, and now all of our documents are gone. So what's happening is workflow, based on my starting rules, has grabbed those files, and it's going to kick off a Laserfiche forms task for me. So if I go up here into my 9 squares, when navigating through the repository, I'm going to go into my tasks area. We can see here that I have 3 new tasks for accounts payable that came in today at 11:07. This must be Pacific time. And I can go ahead and if I wanted to, I could review them all at the same time. Within Laserfiche, you do have the ability to approve multiple things at once, but I'm going to go ahead and just click through them. So my workflow process kicked off, and what happened was we leveraged the Laserfiche Smart Capture invoice tool to extract some basic information from our invoices that we dragged and dropped in. And from there, it kicked off this forms process. So I can see here is a copy of my invoice right here in an embedded iframe in my task, so I don't have to go and open up that document. I can see it right here from my file and make the changes. So for some reason, it didn't collect the vendor, but that's okay because I have a drop-down list, maybe pulling again from my ERP or from my Laserfiche folder structure of all of my vendors, so I can quickly select which vendor this applies to. I have a link here directly to the vendor folder, so if I wanted to open that up, I could go directly to the vendor folder and peruse any information that I need. And then I have the information pertaining to my invoice. And so we can see here that it captured our invoice total, our invoice number, the invoice date, all from our document here. And if I wanted to go ahead and break out the line items, that's something I could certainly do. So we've got 4 line items. I'm going to go ahead and just add these 4 line items. 175, 175. Something that the Laserfiche Smart Capture tool doesn't do currently is line item details. But as you can see here, just by having a table built in, I can line item and add my codes as needed. And so I can select again from a drop-down list of GLs. So if it changes and if I want to attach it to a specific project that maybe it pertains to phasing, whatever it might be. Additionally, if I had a purchase order to go along with this, I could upload the purchase order. Otherwise, if it captured the purchase order as part of the smart capture, I could go ahead and leverage the Laserfiche workflow tools behind the scenes to link the two together. And then from there, once I've completed it, I'm going to go ahead and just sign off, saying this is good. And then this is going to kick off the approval process where it's going to route to my manager. And then again, based on the dollar amount, it's going to route to the CFO for approval. So my manager has maybe been sitting at their desk, just, monitoring their email, waiting for things to happen. And then they get a new email for an invoice approval. So in their box, they have an invoice approval. You have the ability to customize what this email message looks like. And here is a link directly to the task. And so they don't even have to be in Laserfiche. They can just be sitting at their email doing their regular business. Click that, and then it will bring them directly to their task. This task, when it comes through for managerial approval or whichever step it is in the process, you have the ability to customize the fields, the layout, so that each person in your process can view the information in a way that's pertinent to them. So I can go ahead and check the line items. Okay, it looks like Laura did a great job. Sounds good. So we're going to approve that. And then in my demo environment, it's actually bringing me directly to the CFO approval. But again, they can have a email sent to their box notifying them that, oh, this has reached a certain threshold. We need you to sign off on this invoice. So go ahead. Everything looks good. I can approve or reject it. I'm going to approve it. So from here, that information is getting deposited into our Laserfiche repository. And then from there, anybody, a part of our organization who has the ability to review vendor documentation can come into the repository and take a look at our vendor folders. So if we go in here, we're just going to expand that. And we're going to go into Rockstar Industries. We can see that updated today was our new invoices. So I'm going to just sort it by last modified. And if I just do a checkbox here, we can see that all of our metadata information was populated automatically. So based on the smart capture, grabbing the invoice name, number, vendor, all of that information, that populated these metadata fields, which I can then use for searching. If I go ahead and click preview, we can take a look at the invoice right here in this screen. Something else I want to show, which I know is really important to a lot of organizations, is the action history. So within Laserfiche, you have the audit trail tracking. That blew up the whole screen, which is all I wanted. You have the audit trail tracking, so you can see who's doing what in your system at any given period of time. But as you build out forms processes, you can also have action history associated with your processes. And so when this invoice was approved, archived into the system, after the approval, we have the approval log here that was dumped in. So we can see, I'm going to actually just open that up so we can get a better view. We can see who approved the document, when they approved it, what that action history was. If they had maybe included any notes or anything like that, we can have that as part of this action history. So you can, again, preview and have that transparency into what happened with your document. Additionally, you can have your files link within Laserfiche. So as I mentioned earlier, if there were a PO associated with this invoice, we could link that together. So if I click on my Details tab, select a document again, we'll be able to see that there's a document link. So based on information that's collected on your document or that you manually apply to the file, you can leverage that and workflow to link that content together. So as we can see here in Rockstar Industries, we have a contracts folder, an invoices folder. Maybe we had a purchase order folder. And if there were a purchase order associated, we would be able to see a document link not only for the approval log, but also for the purchase order. And that way you can have all of your content associated. So if we go into a different invoice, we can see that that invoice log is associated. So no matter where you are in your repository, you can link your content together behind the scenes via workflow. So again, the last step in our process here, once the invoices have all been approved, we can build a workflow tool that will then generate a push to your ERP. And so if we go into our accounting folder, export to ERP, we can see that upon approval, or whatever incremental amount you'd like. So maybe this is something you want to run daily. Maybe you want to run it after each invoice approval. You have unlimited options for this, but it essentially creates a CSV file with all of the field information pertaining to that record that we can then use to download and import into our finance system. So again, we can set up the columns so that they are ready for importing into whichever system you're using. So, Great Plains, Tyler Technologies, any number of them out there will typically accept a CSV import. And so we can match the columns to their requirements and make that seamless for you. So to recap here, what we did from the current slide, we used the Laserfiche cloud environment to build a workflow that would allow me to drag and drop a document, or I could scan a document into a folder. Laserfiche picked it up, extracted some key pieces of information for me so that I didn't have to rekey it all. From there, it kicked off a forms process that allowed me to route that document for approval from person to person based on the dollar threshold and archive it in the system. And then from there, it's available for searching and retrieval later. And you can even have your records retention applied to that file. So, after the 7 years, maybe you can get rid of it from your system, whatever you need. So again, I used the cloud environment, and we used all of these tools, including the Laserfiche Smart Capture. So I want to actually jump back into the cloud environment and just kind of walk you through that automation quickly. So I'm going to go into the Process Automation tab. And now, if you are using a self-hosted system of Laserfiche, you can still build out this same type of process. The Smart Capture tool is an add-on. Workflow and forms may be a part of your system, but if they're not, you can certainly add them. But one of the neat features about cloud is that you have everything all centralized under, one roof. So you don't have to navigate to different URLs to get to forms or remote onto a different server to get to forms. It's all just centrally located for you. So we built out our starting event, which again was a document getting added to the repository with the name of invoice. And then from there, a workflow grabbed it. And let me go ahead and show you what that looks like. And the workflow grabbed it, grabbed it, applied some information, and then pushed it to Smart Capture, where Smart Capture then extracted all of the necessary invoice information from there. So let me just sort again. So it ran the capture profile and then kicked off my process to forms and then applied the metadata and filed it away. So that workflow in combination with the Laserfiche forms process, which I'll show you, is what allowed us that seamless process. So if I go into accounts payable here, we can take a look. So again, Laserfiche and forms can be used in combination with each other to allow you to automate any process that you have. So our starting event was the workflow, kicking off and creating a starting event, creating that initial form for me to review and apply all of the GL coding. From there, it creates the folder, and then it routes for managerial approval. If it were denied, it would go back to the submitter, maybe end event. That's another thing really important to consider. If there's something wrong with your process or if it gets rejected, what is your workflow process going to be? So in that requirements gathering step in building out your process automation, it's really important to also plan for what happens if there's rejection and make sure that you're mapping that out. So we've got our CFO approval, then it's saving the form to Laserfiche. These items with the little gear are initiating workflow processes. So here it's inserting the invoice data into a table, which essentially we're using to create that CSV, saving the action history to the vendor folder, and then creating it and saving it into the folder. So that's kind of the process that we built out. And then if I jump back into the PowerPoint, I want to bring up a couple of other resources that are available to you. So if you're new to Laserfiche, or maybe you're not new, you have the ability to take advantage of a ton of pre-configured forms and workflow tools within Laserfiche. So if you just visit https://marketplace.laserfiche.com, you can take a look at all of the different processes that are available for you. When you click the Learn More, it will actually bring up a brief description of what the process looks like, who's involved, the forms that are associated, and so you can decide from there if that's something you want to import into your system. Additionally, with those, when you plop them into your system, if you want to further customize them to your team and your needs and your requirements, you can. These are just tools to get you started so you don't have to recreate the wheel, completely from the beginning. Other resources that are available are also just the CDI team. We're here to help you with any of your project management and consulting services. So we can help you spec out your process, build a statement of work, help you decide, whether the time estimated and costs associated are worthwhile, and then from there help you deploy it and, hold your hand really every step of the way. So CDI is here to assist you with any of your process automation needs. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and open it up to questions. So if you have any questions, feel free to go ahead and put them in the chat. I do see there are a couple, so I'll get started. One additional thing that I want to mention is that I did include a handout today. So if you're looking at the GoToWebinar little screen, there's a handout, just the 5 steps to accounts payable automation. Feel free to download that and kind of leverage the resources within it to help you start planning out your automation. So let's go into the questions here. So first question, would you be able to write the invoice info into a relational database for the ERP Cassell? That is possible. If you're in a cloud environment, with the new API changes that Laserfiche has deployed, that might be possible. Otherwise, what we would probably have to take a look at is building something like what I had shown today, where Laserfiche creates that CSV for you that you could then import into your Cassell database. That's something I am, again, happy to reach out again and reach out on offline and assist with. Any other questions? questions. Otherwise, this is a pretty short and sweet webinar from CDI today. If you do have anything or you think of something after the fact, don't hesitate to reach out. My contact details are here on the screen, laura@cdi.support, or you can give me a call. I appreciate everybody's time today. Thank you for joining me, and enjoy the rest of your week.